It's a dark, cold world out there. There's a time to live and a time for a man to die. There are places for dead men in the earth and the sky. Don't you venture too far now, 'cause you can't come back from the place where the good guys always dress in black. When you go to the old saloon at the dead South End, gonna find you a man there wants to be your friend. If you dare to deny his wish, you'll be dead by dawn. So give him a drink and a smile and then move right on. Rednecks with white faces, don't go putting them down. Rednecks with white faces, they ain't no rodeo clowns.
And boom, just like that, it's
Boom.
Thursday night, and we are the Video Bros, so that means it's party time. I'm Bobby Munson, the man beside me, the man with the angelic voice, Papa Smokes. Papa Smokes, how you doing tonight, sir?
Woo, I'm doing great tonight, Munson. I'm ready to party. I'm here, and I'm giving a shout out to all the wrestling people out there.
Are gonna hopefully get them all gathered in here very shortly. Yes, it's an early start time for us here tonight, going on an hour early. And you know what? We're going to be doing the same thing next week, Papa Smokes. I believe we are going to be starting an hour early as well, too. We are going to be bringing you a very, very awesome guest on next week's episode, but we're going to get more people in here before we drop that announcement. So stay tuned, because before the end of the first half of the Thursday night doubleheader right here on Ring Respect Radio, we are going to let you know who you can expect on the show next Thursday night. And this one's a big one. I like this one, Papa Smokes. I'm pumped for this.
I'm so pumped. I want to say it right now, but we'll wait. Everybody have patience. You're going to hear the big announcement coming up soon.
You bet. Stay tuned for that. It's going to be coming up. And again, we've got the double header for you, because we got a lot to talk about on the MLW side. We haven't had much to watch on the MLW side, Papa Smokes, but we got some big news to talk about. So stay tuned after the first half here for some MLW talk with myself and Papa Smokes. That's when the party's going to really kick up into high gear, because, hey, we're going to kick things off with a little bit of a retrospect here tonight, Papa Smokes. We recently, unfortunately, in the wrestling community, lost a very big name, wrestler, promoter, and overall good human being as far as, you know, any of the stories that are being told about him. One, Jerry Jarrett. It was a very unfortunate loss, of course, but again, what a legacy he left behind. I'd say more so as a promoter, even going through things, it seems like the promotion side of him was the bigger side of Jerry Jarrett, more so than the wrestling side.
For sure it was. And he did have a short career as a wrestler, but this is a guy that, one of the rare exceptions, didn't learn his craft in the ring so much, learned it on the outside of the ring, selling the business to all the fans in Memphis, Tennessee.
Yeah. And you know what? I got to give props. Like, a lot of the stuff that I'm gonna even bring up tonight can actually be found in a interview, a full on, I believe this is a full 3-hour Jerry Jarrett sit down with Conrad Thompson. And it is a very good piece, because Conrad does a great job of just sitting back and letting Jerry tell the story. Leads him in with a little bit of a question, and then we get a long, great story from Jerry Jarrett. It was a wonderful piece, and just a big shout out. If you haven't seen that after you watch this episode of Ring Respect Radio, go and check that out for an even more in-depth look into the entire life of Jerry Jarrett. Have you seen it, Papa Smokes?
No, I didn't watch that one, but I did watch a recent episode of Stories with Bradshaw and Briscoe, and this was from maybe about 2 years ago, and they had a good long interview with Jerry on there, which is fairly up to date. I don't think he talks to the media all that much anymore, so that's a fairly recent one too, and very, very entertaining.
Yeah, great stories that he has to tell, and a lot of information that was able to pull from this. So again, he starts off by telling that at the age of 3 is when his parents had divorced. So he was raised by his mother. This was Christine Jarrett, who would eventually become a promoter herself. So really kind of led into the family trade right there. So yeah, 3 years old, and it was shortly after that, I believe he said that he was 6 or 7 when he started selling wrestling programs. But his mom actually took a job working within the wrestling as well too, selling programs, selling tickets, doing all that kind of stuff, and really doing the kind of grind that doesn't get appreciated much in pro wrestling. But she did that to be able to help add to making a living for her son and daughter.
For sure, a single mom always needs a few extra bucks in the pocket, and that's exactly what she did. She had a regular daytime job, and then she took a job working at the box office. I can't remember if it was Nashville or Memphis, one of those two cities where they're from anyway. I think it might be Nashville at the beginning, working for Nick Goulas in the office there, and she proved to be such a useful hand around the booking office that Nick started trusting her with more and more responsibilities and duties, so that she was running the entire ticket office and setting up shows, spot shows on the road in the small towns in the surrounding area, which is quite a lot of responsibility. But she learned the job good. She was doing it good, and she, like you said, she got her young son to eventually help her. Setting up, back in the day, they would have a merch table, but also programs and pictures that you could buy too. And little Jerry was selling the programs. I think he said they were a nickel, and he got to keep a penny of that from each one he sold. So high motivation there, pretty good payoff for him.
That really is very good commission. And, we're talking about the people who go out there and sell things at the wrestling shows, the underappreciated faces at the wrestling shows. One of those is right in the chat with us tonight, Auntie Woogie. Glad you're able to join us. Thank you for tuning in and supporting our show as always. Glad to see you out all the time. Thank you. And yes, we are talking about Jerry Jarrett at the moment. And yeah, that upbringing got him into the business early. I want to talk for a minute about who he says his favorite wrestler. I want to know how much you know about a particular individual. Tex O'Reilly is named as the favorite wrestler of Jerry Jarrett. How familiar are you with the work of Tex O'Reilly?
Not very. I would guess that he was a local hometown favorite, either in Nashville. I think it was Nashville that Jerry grew up in. So I'm sure he was a local hero. I don't think Tex ever made it to the big leagues, so to speak. But if you're a young kid starting to go to the shows, that's the guy who made the impression with him. Probably a main event baby face in that town or on the spot shows surrounding. And that's who caught Jerry Jarrett's eye at the beginning anyway.
Yeah, and then he actually names Lou Thesz as the one who had the biggest impact on his life, his career, and everything like that. Said that, they did work together, but it wasn't until eventually that Lou Thesz came to work for Jerry Jarrett that's when they actually grew their bond, their friendship that would go on from there.
Yeah, he had met Thesz briefly as a young child and was so impressed by the stature and the professionalism and the star power that Thesz had around him. He would have been a very confident and strong man at that time, having been the NWA champion for some time and all that. And when he came to play the Nashville arena there, or the venue that they ran their shows in, Jerry got a look at him and exchanged a couple words with him, and as a youngster, and that made all the impression in the world. I think he said always to him after that, he looked to Thesz as to what a champion was supposed to be.
For sure. How much do you know about the wrestling career of Jerry Jarrett before we start talking about his promotion and all his promoting and stuff like that? How deep did you get on the wrestling side of things there, Pop Smokes?
Well, I know that he was helping run spot shows on the road, and even was had some ideas. Now he was working at this time for Roy Welch and Nick Goulas. Mm-hmm. Goulas being more the businessman, less wrestling, more business, but Welch being the wrestling guy. We've talked about Roy Welch numerous times on this podcast. His contribution in helping to lay the foundations of Southern wrestling in America are just massive. And this is a guy that was running 12 states at the same time. Never mind 12 cities, 12 states each with numerous cities that they're running within that. This is one guy doing that through booking offices all over the South, driving around in a Cadillac. Roy Welch had one of those early cell phones. It was like a box in the trunk of his car, and he could have the phone with the wire going to it, and he could talk on the phone. Guy like that needed that, and just working all the time and driving all the time. And it was Roy Welch that first noticed that young Jerry Jarrett was kind of had a special mind for the business. Jerry was asking lots of questions, being respectful, and was creative and interesting with his ideas. And it was Roy Welch that said, damn, we got to get this kid doing something because he's actually got some potential. But now that he was 16, Jerry was 16 running some of those shows on the road. But, you know, that doesn't always sit well with the boys in the back, that when there's someone that's in charge of them, that's the boss, that hasn't been a bumper, that hasn't been a wrestler kind of thing. So it was thought within the company that we got to get him some training. He's got to start doing some in-ring stuff because the boys don't like it. So he trained to be a referee first, and then he got trained for the wrestling business by Tojo Yamamoto. You've heard his name numerous times associated with Memphis and Mid-South territory, and he was a very feared competitor and a real-life shooter and all that stuff, and took the kind of kayfabe part of the business very, very seriously. So to get trained by Tojo, you were actually probably going to just get your ass kicked and get stretched for a couple of months first, and if you kept coming back, then he would keep training you, and you would get that awesome training that lots of superstars that we know got from Tojo. But interesting to note also that while Tojo was training Jerry Jarrett to be a professional wrestler, he also said in this day and age, you have to be able to protect yourself at all times in that ring. So he said, I don't have time to train you in shoot technique, but here's a guy who can, and he went to Sailor Moran. Did you read anything or hear anything about Sailor Moran, Munson?
I did, actually, because I was going to say, I hope you didn't forget Sailor Moran there, Papa Smokes. You know what? We can't forget everybody who joins us in the chat, especially great supporters like B. Carter.
Hell yeah.
Hey, good to see you. Say better late than never. Hey, you just showing up is awesome. We actually kicked off early tonight, so the fact that we have anybody here with us at this point in time is fucking fantastic. Yeah, we're in good moods tonight. We're going to have a lot of fun. We're bringing the doubleheader back. We got some MLW shit to talk about because, you know, there's lots of stuff going on over there right now. So we're going to have some fun here. Going to have a good old time, as always. Going to talk a little bit more about Jerry Jarrett, of course. Yeah, there's lots more to talk about when it comes to Jerry. But we'll also be talking, you know, probably talk a little PPW and stuff like that, because why not? We got time, Pop Smokes. Starting early, we got all the time in the world here to do what we want tonight. So let's have some fun. Back to Jerry. Go back to Jerry Jarrett. Of course, yes, go back to Sailor Moran. Of course, I'm glad you brought that back up because I wanted to know a little bit more. I started to read a little bit, but Sailor Moran, definitely not somebody whose name I have heard thrown around. I don't even know if that name has come up anytime that we've done one of these retrospects here on Ring Respect.
Well, I'm not even sure that Sailor Moran was a pro wrestler. In fact, I know that he was used as a hitman, so to speak, or a tough guy in the wrestling biz. You know, in previous episodes, we've talked about Gene LaBelle and a couple of other guys like that promoters would use as a tough guy, as their muscle kind of thing. If they had a wrestler that they thought was going to be out of line, or maybe try and work over one of their wrestlers for real in the ring, or if they had a guy with one of their belts that didn't want to drop the belt, or didn't want to give the belt back, or was trying to hold up the promoter for money, whatever the case may be, Sailor Moran was the kind of guy you would bring in and give him a match. But you weren't going to get a match out of him. You were going to get a beating, and that's what he did. He was a peacemaker, so to speak. But in order to make peace, he made real bad war, and there wasn't anybody that could stand up to him at that time. similar to the old Dutch Mantel, the old grappler from the 20s, a similar legendary figure. I don't think there's a lot about him. I don't think people even wanted to speak his name all that much, just in case he got pissed off at you. You'd never survive it. So that was interesting about Sailor Moran. And then anybody that watched Tales from the Territories heard the story that Jerry Jarrett tells too about there had been a couple of wrestlers pissed off by some business matters or whatever, and his enemies had sent Mario Galento after Jerry Jarrett to get him. Galento, another tough guy, notorious from the past, and that's when Jerry Jarrett's training from Sailor Moran kicked in, and he was able to survive that attack from Mario Galento. You know, as the show said, going for his good eye. He had one good eye and one bad eye, and Jerry plucked out the good one. So that didn't quite go for Mario Galento, but the legend lives on anyway.
Yeah, can you imagine if that you had some sort of hired muscle in today's day and age with pro wrestling, how viral and how canceled you'd be immediately for having a tough guy beat down somebody in the ring for doing some kind of shenanigans of this kind? Like, I mean, it just seems like, you know, we've become a really, really soft society over the years.
Well, and hence why a lot of people think they can get away with a lot of stuff too. I mean, even things I don't even want to mention it, even ridiculous gimmicks that got over, such as flips with various parts of your body, or other ridiculous gimmicks, or sticking your hands in your pockets and pretending to fake kick a guy in the ankles. That's the kind of shit that would get Sailor Moran on you for sure.
We need a Sailor Moran to sort these people out now.
Yeah, Filthy Tom. Tom.
There we go. He can wipe half. Well, I mean, he can mop the floor with just about anybody in the industry, if you ask me. But that's, I mean, what can you say about a true pro fighter like that? I mean, have you ever gone and watched one of the dude's fights before? Like, man, he is tough as nails. I would not want to screw with that guy.
Yeah, he won his debut fight in 42 seconds or something like that. He's a beast.
Yeah, ridiculous. But another time, we'll talk about Filthy Tom. And hey, who knows? Maybe we'll get him on the show sometime. But no, that's not who we've got next week. It's a tease. But wait till the end of this episode, and we'll let you know who's joining us next week right here on Ring Respect Radio. But yeah, going back to Jerry Jarrett's career. Let's start talking a little bit on the side of promotion now, seeing as we're getting to the halfway mark of the show. This was about 1977 when he founded the Memphis, Tennessee Central Continental Wrestling Association, the CWA in Memphis. You know, some of the big stars, like, you know, I mean, one of the biggest stars, I mean, the people, especially listening to our cast today, are going to know, I mean, Jerry the King Lawler, one of the ones that came out of that territory and everything like that. So Jerry Jarrett, I mean, I know you're going to fill us in with a lot more names than that, it's, of course, too, Papa Smokes, but that was his space, and he did an excellent job with that territory. Wonderful job with, you know, making things matter down there as well, too. It really, really stood out.
And it's weird to think that just maybe even 5 or 10 years before Jarrett got to Memphis, Tennessee, it was a dead town and a dead territory. I know that in East Tennessee, where Memphis is, the territory had died after the death of its most popular babyface, which was Whitey Caldwell. And he was so very, very popular. See, this is one of those local guys that you probably haven't heard of, but he was so popular in the state of Tennessee, it was crazy. And he was a top baby face all over that state, and probably other states as well. But he died one night driving from the matches in a rollover car accident. And Tennessee wrestling just died with Whitey Caldwell for 15 years or something. Promoters tried to run shows. Nobody would go. They wanted Whitey and they couldn't have him. And it's a weird story, man. Like, just the disappearance of that one guy destroyed the entire territory and the entire town for years and years afterwards. So Memphis was very quiet, very dark for a long time, until the first star they got there after Caldwell was was superstar Bill Dundee, and you know who he is for sure. He was also a booker and a promoter of some sorts in his time, and he had the magic that the fans got behind. And then they started bringing in Jackie Fargo and Roughhouse Fargo and some of those guys, and it started to see some life. Once Jerry Jarrett got control and took the book there, his creativity and his ideas started to really bring things around. But what he needed was his Hulk Hogan, so to speak, his Rock. So he evaluated all the talent in the area, and he had a young guy coming up, Jerry Lawler, and said, this guy's good. This guy can talk. He gets the ring work and everything, and he just built the whole push around Lawler. And look how that turned out. Memphis became the hottest city in the entire country, possibly in North America, for a long time after that. And they just had a license to print money. And, Memphis isn't the hugest city, so Lawler and the local wrestling, with the great time slot and the great TV deal they got through their announcer, Lance Russell, they had the whole city and the whole state watching wrestling constantly. It was the most popular time slot show. It was the most popular show in the city, most popular TV show in the state. And all those shows at the Memphis Coliseum were just sold out again and again and again and again, constantly. And that'll be Jerry Jarrett's legacy, was just the way he took a dark city like Memphis at that time and just lit it right up with huge business.
And if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, this would be the same place where the promoting of Lawler and Kaufman took place then as well too, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And I mean, what a change to the wrestling business that was, in a sense, to have this Hollywood actor come in and, get brought into that world, something that, we see more commonly nowadays in pro wrestling, but at the time, not so much. I mean, he was out there making a mockery of pro wrestling and everything like that, but he did kind of get brought in quite well with Jerry Lawler, and they pulled off what, infamously is probably one of the most, talked about bits in all of professional wrestling, mostly because this kind of showed it off to the rest of the world and really put it on the map. It got exposure to that particular area more so than they could have hoped for, because this went national at that point once you started to get Andy Kaufman talking about it on television, going on David Letterman, and really putting attention to that particular territory.
Oh yeah, can't underestimate the effect that angle had on everything. Apparently Kaufman was so interested in wrestling, he was reaching out to a number of promotions and stuff. He tried to get it going in New York with Vince McMahon Sr., I think, and no, he didn't want any part of it. And all the old school promoters didn't really want any part of it because they thought it would expose the business, which it kind of did. But that was the thing about Jarrett, was that he recognized the importance of cross promotion kind of thing, where he could get the name of wrestling and the name of their promotion and all that out into the popular mindset. That was always his idea, because Jarrett had a degree in business from university. He had all kinds of experience behind him. He had worked at a few companies in advertising and publicity and stuff like that. So he was fascinated by wrestling. He always wanted to sell wrestling. And I mean, that was just the most beautiful opportunity that dropped right in his lap. It would have been like having Jim Carrey at his heyday, or any of the huge comedians that have gone on to make movies, Adam Sandler, or any of those guys, getting them at their prime, punching down, like leaning down to your small local promotion saying, hey man, let's do some shit. Let's use my platform and get you out there. But I want to get my shit out there too. And Kaufman's interest was in being the ladies champion of the world. He thought it would be hilarious. And he was constantly, he never really fought lady wrestlers. They always took volunteers out of the crowd, and they were not really worked matches. Kaufman would just overpower them and hold them down kind of. And of course, famously, that lady Foxy gave him as much as he could handle and then some. And the crowd liked Foxy and wanted to bring her back, and she had another try at Kaufman, almost got him down too, but the whole angle, then they had said, that's gone over so good, we got to do something with Lawler now and get him involved, and we all saw what happened there. As a kid, I was watching AWA wrestling, something so far away and nothing to do with that, with Memphis wrestling. They showed a montage of that on the show I was watching because it was such huge wrestling news, even though it was from another league. They showed that on TV, and we were just aghast. Oh my God, that's Kaufman from TV, and there's Lawler giving him huge leaping pile drivers in the middle of the ring, and Kaufman's got the neck brace on, and we didn't know what was going on, man. It certainly looked completely real to us, and none of those guys ever breathed a word about that for until Kaufman died, I think. Then people talked about it, pulled back the curtain a little bit. I think Lawler finally actually said something in his autobiography, but they kept their mouths shut about that for a long time, and no one knew how much was real and how much wasn't.
Yeah, Kaufman literally took it right to his grave on that one, which, you can't say about most days. You couldn't pull that kind of stuff off nowadays because everybody, they know what's going on. They know when you're winking at the camera, all this kind of stuff, because it's been overexposed. But at the time, I mean, I could only imagine, of course, this was a little bit before my time, at least knowledge-wise. I'm pretty sure it was before my time birth-wise, too, by a little bit, but it goes without saying. Yeah, this was massive, and it really changed the game. Again, too, the way they sold it on the David Letterman show, too, you would actually believe that this was real because you had Kaufman coming in, dropping F-bombs on national TV, which was a massive no-no or whatever, which, I mean, he was really pushing the boundaries of what you could really get away with on television. He knew how to draw heat like nobody else knew how to draw heat, in a sense. And I'm not talking wrestling. He knew how to draw heat as a performer. Let's put it that way. I don't want to undercut pro wrestlers of the time, but Kaufman understood what it took to get to that level.
Absolutely. And he was a comedian and an actor. So, I mean, all this stuff was natural to him. And being a huge wrestling fan, all he wanted to do was put all his energy into mocking the fans, making them hate him. And especially with the sexist stuff in the 80s, boy, the ladies didn't like that back then any more than they like it now. So imagine that he was getting the whole building riled up every week. And that was when a lot of wrestling fans were women as well, but probably 50%. So he had an audience to work with the whole time.
Yeah, and you'll be able to answer this question a lot better than I will, Papa Smokes. B. Carter wanting to know, how big was the Canadian wrestling scene at this time? I thought Calgary was huge at the same time as Memphis.
Well, it wouldn't have been doing the same business as Memphis for sure. I'm not even sure. Yeah, Calgary would have been under Stu Hart by that time and getting some momentum, but Montreal and Toronto are massive wrestling cities. Toronto is just kind of like a satellite of New York. It gets everything that New York and Detroit get, kind of thing. But Montreal's always had its own organic scene. And Munson, you know a fair bit about this as well from reading the Andre the Giant biography. They go into exhaustive detail, and Vance Nevada's book as well. Exhaustive detail about how the entire Montreal promotion worked. That's a huge, huge wrestling city. Both Montreal and Toronto are massive wrestling cities in North America.
Yeah, and just a who's who of names that worked in that territory as well too at the time. I mean, aside from Andre the Giant, I mean, you had the Vachons that were, staples of that particular area and stuff like that too. Abdullah the Butcher, who had come through there as well too, and a lot of other big names. I mean, that was just to name
everyone.
A few. I mean, the Rougeaus. I mean, it's where they all kind of came out of, is that Montreal area, and even still today, people in Montreal are extremely passionate about their pro wrestling, and they've got some great companies and some great professional wrestlers out there that are, kicking ass and doing really well. I know that, formerly when we were working with Love Wrestling, there's Zach over there. Shout out to Zach. Still a great bro. He was always talking about the wrestling scene there. I believe it's IWS or something like that, and how awesome it is. And
I'm
the
sure
bits and
there's a
pieces
few.
I've seen, it seems like a very exciting company for sure.
For sure. And we just had a good example of what a wrestling city Montreal is with Vince's company just went through there recently with a hometown boy or two hometown boys on the roster. And my God, look at what the fans did in that show. I only really saw clips of it, but my God, when do you see an audience that invested in the show? Loud, singing, chanting, cheering, crying. I mean, it was really intense. And you don't see crowds like that. And think of the other famous Montreal matches. There's a few of them, but they're very loud and very passionate. They'll let you know how they're feeling, whether it's positive or negative. And Montreal's such a crazy wrestling legacy.
And of course, like around the time that we're talking about here too with Memphis would have been when Vern was running the AWA, and again that would have been in your neck of the woods, which was Winnipeg at the time. So talk a little bit about that as well too, to kind of to play off of what B. Carter was asking here. Give a little bit of back history there with the AWA in Winnipeg.
Oh yeah, well AWA was running out of Minneapolis, St. Paul, and they had a pretty wide road area, including Chicago, Milwaukee, and a few other places, but up north, they went to Winnipeg and they ran spot shows in Manitoba in small towns like Portage La Prairie and Dauphin. And I think they even did a show in The Paw, way up there, like 8 hours north. And we used to laugh at the guys just doing their promos. Just, God, we don't want to go to this stupid little town and stuff. Like pretty funny stuff. But all those guys were also sharing talent too, from Vince Sr.'s WWF to Vern to the guys in Montreal, including the Vachons and the Rougeaus. They were all sharing talent and having their guys tour through, and that was the beauty of the territory system at that time, is that you didn't have to stay somewhere and sign a contract and then maybe become disillusioned with how they're using you or get stale to the fans and still be stuck there and not enjoying yourself. You can just pack up and go anytime you damn well feel like it. Work with all new people, new booking, new management, new wrestlers, everything else, and keep making money. Just do the tour all the way through. Nobody ever gets tired of you.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, a little bit of Canadian wrestling history there too. We're gonna, of course, talk more Canadian wrestling history on this show coming up very soon. So yeah, so kind of like Hamilton, always with those punches. I love it.
It's not unfair. Yeah.
No, yeah. I mean, truer statement could be said right now. But yes, going back to Jerry Jarrett here as we kind of get to towards the towards the end of his time. Or well, I mean, not to the end, but with 1989, that was when he merged with WCCW, which was World Class Championship Wrestling. That would be in the Dallas area. That was when he merged that time.
He bought it.
Yeah, he bought it. Yeah. And it was, I can't remember what he said too, like maybe 50,000 or something like that. And you just, back then he goes, it was just a handshake and handing over cash kind of thing. There wasn't a lot of mumbo jumbo with paperwork when it came to buying companies at that time.
Yeah. And he tells that story on the podcast I listened to. The business had dried up in Dallas. It had been as hot as it could have been with Fritz Von Erich and the Von Erich boys. And based on the popularity and overness of the three boys, they could have just sold anything. I mean, those fans were insane for the Von Erichs. The whole state was, but especially that city, Dallas. So when the boys, time goes on, man, and they weren't so dedicated to wrestling after a while. We know there were some, personal problems with the guys, including some drugs and some other things. And the territory started to dry up, and it's hard to keep it going well for an extended period of time. And the fans grow up a bit and stop watching, and maybe the younger generation didn't get into it just for a little bit. Who knows what all the reasons are, but yeah, Jerry was able to kind of waltz in and buy it for a song. And I think Fritz just wanted to be done with it and just took whatever price was offered. And there, Jerry had a new territory and he breathed some life into that too. But I think it was going to take more than he had. But everybody respected Jerry for his creativity. He always was so smart with ideas. And, you know, that a lot of those people that talk about him mention him with his yellow lined legal pad and his pen. And he would just be sitting there thinking, and yeah, he would just have an idea, write it down before you forget it. And he had all kinds of stuff. He was the first guy in Memphis, the first guy to in wrestling to decide to take an ad, get a sponsor's ad, and put it on the canvas of the ring. He had worked for this tobacco company, and he said, "Hey, you guys want to sponsor us? I got some good places I can put your ads." And he got canvases made with the Red Man Tobacco or some name like that anyway in the middle of the ring. And that was like product placement in the old days. I'm still surprised that more wrestling companies don't do that. I know with PPW, we have some sponsors on the ring apron and stuff like that. But yeah, very cool. And just always thinking outside the box, always sell the product to the fans. And, you know, how can we get more eyes on this? How can we get more sponsors? We got to sell.
That's right. And speaking of sell, if you happen to be in the Saskatoon area and you want to sponsor Prairie Pro Wrestling, we got a whole lot more space around that ringside to put your ads up. So give us a shout. We want to take your money and make you famous, just like Prairie Pro Wrestling. Going back to Jerry Jarrett again here. So let's talk about the one that I'm sure a lot of people who watch our show are going to be a little bit more familiar about, possibly 1993 to 1994. This time was when he was trusted by Vince McMahon Jr. to come on over to the WWF to kind of take control of things over there while Vince was going through the steroid trial. He had been accused of providing steroids to his wrestlers and encouraging them to use them in order to get the larger physiques and stuff like that too. So at that time, Jerry was trusted with the entire WWF at that time and what was going on over there.
Yeah, they had been friends and friendly co-workers or colleagues, I suppose, in the wrestling business for a number of years. Especially Jarrett knew Vince Sr., and I'm sure Vince Sr. would have enlightened Vince Jr. to some of the, you know, better or worse businessmen to deal with in the business. And Jerry Jarrett was one of the most respected guys, especially for his booking and creativity. So, yeah, when he came up to work there, it was just like Jerry did with many companies. Promoters or bookers would call him in to a territory and say, "Hey, my business is down. I need a shot in the arm. I've got some good stuff here, but I can't figure out why it's not working." And Jerry made a secondary career out of that, flying down to wherever it is, coming in, evaluating the talent, watching the show, and saying, "All right, here's 5 things you need to do, and it'll bump your business up. You might need some better talent. Your venue doesn't look that great. You need more baby faces. You need better lights. You don't have enough sponsors." Whatever the list would happen to be, and he could turn your promotion around in a big hurry.
Yeah, really could. Speaking of sponsored, so I'm going to take one quick minute just to mention our sponsor here on the show, Papa Smokes. That is Rogue Energy. The QR code that you see right below Papa Smokes right there will take you to rogueenergy.com, where you can use the promo code OLEPODS to get 10% off of your order. Rogue Energy is an energy drink. It is an alternative to the average everyday energy drink. If you're looking for something that is 0 sugar, low calorie, full of flavor, and vegan friendly, then Rogue Energy is for you. Last but not least, on my list anyway, Pop Smokes, in terms of the promotional side of Jerry Jarrett, it would have been 2002 to 2005 where he and his son, Jeff Jarrett, decided to begin NWA TNA Wrestling, which inevitably is what Impact Wrestling is today. That is the new incarnation of it. But that was where it all started, was with the Jarrett family beginning NWA TNA.
Yeah, and Jerry had learned a lot of his stuff from promoter Eddie Graham down in Florida, so it seemed perfect for those guys to start a rival company down in Orlando, Florida, something that could compete possibly against WWE, or if not compete against them, survive in its own bubble down there with some more traditional wrestling fans. And, you know, everybody knows the history. They were doing pretty good for a while there. They were not, they didn't have the power of and money as WCW did under Turner Broadcasting and all that stuff, but they did pretty all right, and they managed to woo some big stars from the WWF over to their company and started gaining some traction. I got nothing but love for TNA. You know that I'm not a big WWE guy, so I kind of look for the alternative sometimes. And TNA had its silliness, and it wasn't perfect by a long shot, but during that kind of 2004 or 5 till '09 or 10 kind of, they had a pretty good run going there. That Samoa Joe versus Kurt Angle stuff was good.
Yeah.
Christian Cage came over. He was good. They had all the homegrown stars like AJ Styles and Kazarian and Christopher Daniels and Suicide and all those cool guys.
Bobby
and then,
Roode.
Yeah, there's a good one. Bobby Roode, all the Canadian contingent there. Yeah. And then they also had such a strong ladies division too with Velvet Sky and Angelina Love and Mickey James and a whole bunch of
Gail Kim and
Gail Kim.
Yeah.
A whole bunch of good ladies wrestlers too. Their ladies roster was the best in the business for a while there too. So
still is.
Yeah, probably actually, and that's part of their legacy. But what a thing they did, starting up a rival company, and everybody laughed. You'll never stand in the face of WWE, but look what they did. It kept going for a long time until they didn't want it anymore, and somebody in Canada bought it, and still it's around. Impact, still with Scott D'Amore running the place.
Yeah, and still probably doing pretty decent for themselves as well too. They got some great names over there. They put on some great shows. Again, I do try to watch every once in a while, especially some of their pay-per-views. They do a great job. So that's all I had personally on the side of Jerry Jarrett, Pop Smokes, unless there's anything that you want to add to this before we head on over to the next half of the show.
Not really, but I think a lot of the fans will remember that part of his legacy is that he was actually going to be in charge of the WWE if Vince went to jail for steroids, which might have been 15 years or some long time like that, right? His sentence, if he was found guilty, might have been 20 years. He might have been in the can for 15 years or so.
So weren't they going for life even at one point? Like that was. I don't know if I just heard that. I'm not sure, but I mean, life in the States, and B. Carter could attest to this. I'm pretty sure a life sentence is a 50-year sentence.
I'm not too sure, but I know that I remember the number 20 for some reason, thinking, wow, like Vince is 40 at this time, like he'll be 60 when he gets it. Like, what? This is crazy, man. But he felt safe in leaving. He was going to let Jerry Jarrett run the company in his absence because, number one, he knew that Jerry could handle this job, and number two, Vince wasn't afraid that Jerry would try and steal the company out from underneath him because he didn't want it, because Jerry never wanted to live in Connecticut or New York or in the Northeast or anything like that. He was a Southern man. He always wanted to get back home, so Vince knew that he didn't want the company either.
Yeah. And B. Carter saying I think he was facing 20 years, so like that yeah, it sounds like that must have been the case. But even so, like you're right, that's 20 years he would have been gone. Imagine how different WWE might have been had Jerry Jarrett been behind it for that period of time instead of Vince himself. You know, I mean, maybe they do have some similar ideas and stuff like that with, you know, promoting, you know, cross promoting with other medias and everything like that. But I think maybe it would have been a little bit more wrestling centric under Jerry than it would have been than it was under Vince.
And I'm sure Vince had some kind of a template for Jerry to follow too. I mean, Jerry wouldn't be letting his imagination run crazy and doing his own shit. It would be probably set up for him, the basic tenets of what to do and in the booking, and not to go too wild. I don't think Jerry would be bringing back Dr. Frank or anything on WWE programming. I don't know if you ever watched that one, but for Halloween that year, they had Dr. Frank. He was like a real Frankenstein type thing. And
good God.
One of the kind of sillier moments that they did, but it also showed that Jerry's imagination was open to trying different things. Him and Lawler had a wacky imagination too, and sometimes they dreamt this stuff up and thought, geez, could we do it and should we do it, kind of thing. And yeah, let's try it and see what happens. And hey, not everything works and not everything goes over, but they were there. They were willing to try lots of crazy stuff.
Yeah, and B. Carter said, I do miss the steroid giants versus the guys of the Attitude Era.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was what was that? The new generation that were taking on the Attitude Era eventually. So many different eras, but fuck it all. It was all about Jerry Jarrett here tonight. I think we got a lot in about his career. What a great man, great human being, and a great promoter. If you ever want to get a hold of us here at our local establishment, as you'll see, that ticker down below is ticking away, showing all of our different social medias, including our email address. Reach out if you ever want to be part of any of the shows, maybe a guest on any of the shows. Speaking of guests, Papa Smokes, I made a promise at the beginning of this episode that before we went over to the second half, we would mention who's joining us right here in the studio next week. We got a big guest joining us. This one is huge. It is Joseph Samael joining the Video Bros next week on Radio. Fuck yeah, this is going to be sweet.
Hell yeah, the almighty Sheik. This is great news. And I was thinking about it this afternoon, Bob, like we don't have a physical list of guests we want, but he's got to be in the top 3 of MLW guests that we wanted to get on this show for a long time. Have never quite hooked him yet, but Bob, you got him. You reached out. He responded. He wants to be on the show. I'm extremely pumped about this. A wrestling figure that I admire a whole bunch.
Yeah, it's going to be a big one. I can't wait. And, oh, yeah, see, we woke the audience up now. OMFG, you bet. We got Beaker. Wow, yeah, you bet. It's going to be awesome. So you know what, you guys, join us in a live capacity. We are going to be starting early again next week as we're joined by the almighty Sheik, Joseph Samael, here to talk all things professional wrestling, PCW Ultra, his time in MLW, and also about his favorite types of music. This guy has got quite the taste in music, Pop Smokes. I'm sure even I will learn some pretty cool shit from this guy when it comes to the music side. I'm very much looking forward to it. It's going to be awesome. Just going to drop this before we take a short break. PPW is coming back in a live capacity on April the 22nd. We are going to have a great night with a big championship match. It's going to be the Sheik Akbar Shabazz defending the Prairie Pro Wrestling Championship against Cutthroat Colton Kelly. It's going to be a big one, Papa Smokes. Looking forward to that. Anyone that's going to be in the area, make sure to join us in a live capacity. It is going to be packed, Papa Smokes. That last show was off the hook with the fans. I don't know. We're going to be pushing our luck on how many we can fit in that building before it gets too stuffy in there.
Munson, don't worry about it. I got a big shoehorn. I'll bring it right to the door, and we'll just keep shoving people in. They keep lining up. We'll keep shoving them in, man. Everyone wants a piece of PPW these days. Everyone wants to come and get a White Claw and a beer from Auntie Woogie. Everybody loves our awesome venue just off Broadway, right next to the Hose and Hydrant. It is a place that on the weekend is always bumping. All the streets around it have people and life and laughter and sounds and drinking and smoking and all the fun things of life. Come down to PPW Wrestling. It will be over by 10:30, 11 at night. You can then go to your nightclub or your pub or whatever you want to do afterwards. You will be feeling good with a bunch of energy after that. Try it. It's awesome.
Yeah, and one more shout out before we take that short break again. I want to give a shout out to a local guy here in the area. Do they have Saskatchewan? Saskatchewan, Saskatoon berry pie, my friend. Saskatoon berry. Because we don't share with the rest of the province. Well, we do, but they have to call it by its real name. Saskatoon berry pie. Do we have that at the PPW shows? I don't know if there is any Saskatoon berry anything there.
Not there, but you can sure get it at lots of places in town.
You sure can, yeah.
B. Carter.
Yeah, there we go, right there. So let's talk to the boss on that one. Let's make something happen, man. He's going to be pulling out what's left of his hair the more requests we keep making here.
You know, we serve pie there. There's going to be a lot of wrestlers with pie all over them eventually, so maybe not, but
I can only imagine what Shiki would look like at the end of the night. He'd be a giant purple mess, that's for sure.